Hello there and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is L24 World News Program and these are the headlines. Death toll of powerful earthquake that struck southeast Afghanistan stands at more than 1,000 dead and more than 600 other wounded, and the toll is still on the rise. In its fourth public hearing investigating the January 6, 2021 attack on Capitol in Washington, U.S. House Committee on Tuesday disclosed new evidence of former President of the United States Donald Trump's personal involvement in one element of the effort to overturn the election. Ukrainian forces launched a renewed assault on Snake Island in the Black Sea. Recent strikes suggested that Ukrainian forces were using powerful Western anti-ship weapons that threatens to undermine Russian naval domination. Hello again and welcome. Those were today's top stories and I am your host Abdurrahim Kashur. First off in our news, death toll of the powerful earthquake that struck southeast Afghanistan stands at more than 1,000 dead and more than 600 other wounded, and the toll is still on the rise. Interior Ministry official Salahuddin Ayyubi said most of the confirmed deaths were in the eastern Afghan province of Pakakitka. Authorities had launched a rescue operation and helicopters were being used to reach the injured and take the medical supplies and food. To other topical news now, at least 26 more people have died in India and monsoon-triggered floods or after being struck by lightning, as millions are affected in the country and neighboring Bangladesh. According to authorities, India has experienced increasing extreme weather in recent years, causing large-scale damage. Environmentalists warn climate change could lead to more disasters, especially in low-lying and densely populated areas.
That's my house. The water was flowing over the roof earlier, but now it's receding. It's tore down the doors, windows and fences. I have sent my family to the flood shelter, but haven't heard from them yet.
Key progress has been made in talks on the revival of Pakistan's International Monetary Fund bailout program. Both sides said that with Islamabad expecting the lender to increase the size and duration of 39 months, $6 billion facility. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is scheduled to arrive in Ankara on Wednesday, making his first visit to Turkey as the two regional heavyweights press ahead with efforts to repair ties following the slaying of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi in Istanbul. The Crown Prince will meet President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on the last leg of the Middle East tour that also took him to Egypt and Jordan. His visit comes before U.S. President Joe Biden's trip to the region next month. In his fourth public hearing investigating the January 6, 2021 attack on Capitol in Washington, U.S. House Committee on Tuesday disclosed new evidence of former President of the United States Donald Trump's personal involvement in one element of the effort to overturn the election. The hearing also included new details about Republican lawmakers of interest to the January 6 investigation.
Just as we heard today that Donald Trump was deeply involved in a scheme to pressure state officials to overturn the election results, we will hear on Thursday that Donald Trump was also the driving force behind the effort to corrupt the Justice Department.
When Donald Trump used the power of the presidency to try to stay in office after losing the election to Joe Biden, he broke that sacred and centuries-old covenant. Whether his actions were criminal will ultimately be for others to decide. But what he did was, without a doubt, unconstitutional. It was unpatriotic, and it was fundamentally un-American. And when he used the power of his presidency to put the enormous pressure on state, local, and local elections officials and his own vice president, it became downright dangerous.
Sitting U.S. senators have moved to the brink of an agreement on bipartisan gun violence bill. The legislation lawmakers have been working toward would toughen background checks for the youngest firearm buyers, require more sellers to conduct background checks, and beef up penalties on gun traffickers.
I don't want us to pass a bill for the purpose of checking a box. I want to make sure we actually do something useful, something that is capable of becoming a law, something that will have the potential to save lives. I'm happy to report, as a result of the hard work of a number of senators in this chamber, that we've made some serious progress.
I believe that this week we will pass legislation that will become the most significant piece of anti-gun violence legislation Congress will have passed in 30 years. This is a breakthrough. And more importantly, it's a bipartisan breakthrough.
Always in U.S., the police response to the gunman's break in a Texas school where he killed 19 children and 2 teachers on the 24th of May was an absolute failure, according to officials, due to the intervening period's length.
According to the director of Texas Department of Public Safety, the gunman was stopped 3 minutes after he entered the elementary school, where he killed 19 pupils and 2 instructors, where the shooter carried out the carnage. Police officers with weapons stood and watched in school corridor for over an hour.
1 hour, 14 minutes and 8 seconds. That's how long the children waited and the teachers waited in rooms 111 to be rescued. And while they waited, the on-scene commander waited for a radio and rifles. Then he waited for shields. Then he waited for SWAT. Lastly, he waited for a key that was never needed.
The police reaction was described as an abject failure by Cole Steve McCrow, head of the Texas Department of Police Safety. McCrow provided testimony at the state senate hearing on how the police handled the tragedy. Peter Redondo, the Uvalde School District Police Chief, made the decision to put the lives of officers ahead of the safety of students. McCrow testified before the Senate committee.
3 minutes after the subject entered the West Building, there was a sufficient number of armed officers wearing body armor to isolate, distract, and neutralize the subject. The only thing stopping a hallway of dedicated officers from entering room 111 and 112 was the on-scene commander, who decided to place the lives of officers before the lives of children.
The federal, state, and municipal investigations into the massacre and its aftermath have concentrated on delays in the law enforcement's response.
The European Union called on the Ethiopian government to reconnect the Tigray region with the world amid a partial siege that has been going on for a year, which has led to accumulation of aid intended for about 1 million hungry people in warehouses. The partial blockade imposed on Tigray is hampering humanitarian efforts, while 5.2 million people need assistance after 19 months of conflict.
More needs to be done. Much of the blockade still remains. There is a need to lift restrictions, especially on the provision of fuel, on cash transactions, restoration of essential services that I just mentioned. A lot of suffering would be over. With the lifting of restrictions on fuel and cash, a lot of unnecessary suffering would be over. And ultimately, with the peaceful settlement of this issue, all suffering in Tigray would be gone.
The proposed constitution for Tunisia, which will be put to a vote on July 25th, has not been certified by the country's president, Kais Saied, as Islam the religion of the state. The action is part of his efforts to overhaul Tunisia's political system, which is alleged to be corrupt and disorganized, but it is also perceived as a pulley to marginalize competing Islamist groups.
The conditions were difficult because of the short time we had at our proposal, but we managed thanks to everyone's effort. To deliver this first version of the constitution, we hope this will satisfy Mr. the President.
نأمل إن شاء الله أن تحظى برضا السيد الرئيس.
Regarding Western Sahara, South Africa reaffirmed on Tuesday its wavering support for this cause. The Algerian National Committee of Solidarity with the Sahrawi people organized a press conference with the delegation of South African women led by Pamela Chouet, Deputy Minister of Human Settlements, parliamentarian and member of the Executive of African National Congress. After visiting the Sahrawi refugee camps, the South African delegation was received by the Algerian Minister for Family and Solidarity and the Algerian Status of Women, Kauthar Kiriko.
Yesterday, I had a meeting with the president of military of Western Sahara in the morning. What he has shared with me is that we keep on sometimes having people that listen to other people and trying to divide us. That's the strategy of enemy. The enemy, when they want to deal with you, they will divide you. The West and some countries that are against liberation of especially Africa, because they are fighting Africa to be united. Because once Africa is united, we will achieve the goal.
Secretary General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Algeria, Shakib Rashid Gaid, is on a working visit to Rome in preparation for the forthcoming 4th Algerian-Italian bilateral summit to be held in Algiers on the 18th and the 19th of July. In a statement, the ministry explained that the Algerian official would share equally with his Italian counterpart Francisco Secchi the follow-up committee charged with organizing the summit, as well as the business forum to be held on its mergers. The two sides will jointly review the totality of draft bilateral agreements to be signed during the summit. The President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, received the Secretary General of the League of Arab States, Ahmed Abul Ghait, this Tuesday on the sidelines of a visit to Algeria as part of preparations for the Arab Summit. Secretary General also held a working meeting with the Algerian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Ramtala Mamra, where they discussed the arrangements for the Arab Summit. And in an exclusive interview with our channel, Ahmed Abul Ghait said Algeria's preparations for the next November's Arab Summit were very serious.
قدمت لسيادة الرئيس تقريرا شاملا عما وصلنا إليه مع صديقي
I have submitted to the President a comprehensive report on what we have reached with my friend and brother Ramtala Mamra, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Algeria, in preparation for this upcoming summit. I have indicated that there are very serious Algerian preparations for the holding of this summit on the 1st and 2nd of next November. And we will continue as Secretariat that gather the Arab states and the Algerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs to organize and prepare for this summit.
جامعة الدول العربية ووزارة الخارجية الجزائرية في الإعداد والتجهيز لهذه القمة. أعتقد أن القمة جاهزة لاستقبال الضيوف والقادة.
I think that the Arab League summit is ready to receive leaders after tomorrow, which means that the preparations are very progressive. The Algerian government has a clear idea about what it is willing to achieve, and the conference center is completely ready. Accommodation and living areas are ready.
مركز المؤتمرات جاهز تماما، مناطق الإقامة والإعاشة جاهزة، تقسيم
In fact, as I found today, as part of 4-hour tour, the matter is perfectly ready.
إطار جولة استمرت يمكن 3-4 ساعات مسألة جاهزة تماما.
In the same line of thought, Ahmed Abu al-Ghait also spoke about Arab intentions and possibility to host both Russian and Ukrainian parties for discussions in hopes to reach a ceasefire.
ننتظر في الأيام القليلة القادمة اجتماع فيديو
In the upcoming days, we are waiting for another video conference meeting between ministers to discuss the given ideas. I'm not in a position that allows me to reveal the precise Arabic intentions, but in the general framework, there is an Arab desire to host both parties for discussions to reach a ceasefire through a reception in the Arab League summit.
من خلال الاستضافة في الجامعة العربية.
Ukrainian forces launched a renewed assault on Snake Island in the Black Sea. Recent strikes suggested that Ukrainian forces were using powerful Western anti-ship weapons that threatened to undermine Russian naval domination. The details with Hussam Berkan.
The Russian Defense Ministry said on Tuesday that air defense successfully repelled a Ukrainian assault on Zemini Island, also known as Snake Island in the Baltic Sea. Spokesman Igor Konashenkov said Ukrainian forces used at least 15 drones and rocket fire to support the failed attack, which he said was abandoned before any troops reached the island.
Russian air defense assets eliminated on the enemy's means of destruction launched at the Snake Island. 13 unnamed aerial vehicles, 4 Tushka-U missiles and 21 Uragan multiple launch rocket system ordnance were shot down. None of the Ukrainian fire units reached its target on the Snake Island. The failed assault forced the enemy to give up landing troops on the island.
In the meantime, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky met with Luxembourg's Prime Minister Javier Bettel in Kiev. During a joint press conference, Luxembourg Prime Minister expressed the European Union willingness to send a strong signal to Ukraine by granting it the status of candidate country for the European club at the end of this week.
J'ai un grand principe, je dois vous avouer, Monsieur le Président, si je demande...
I have a great principle. I must confess to you, Mr. President. If I ask someone for their opinion because I want to base myself on it, I have the principle that I respect that opinion. Otherwise, in this case, there is no point in doing it. So I hope that the European Union too, this Thursday and Friday, will manage to give this signal, which is strong for you, but strong for us too. Because it's not just the Ukrainian war, it's also the defense for the values for which many people died.
This statement came after a full consensus emerged to grant Ukraine and Moldova candidate status for European Union during talks between the 27 European Union affairs ministers meeting in Luxembourg.
Je dirais même un consensus total.
Spokesperson for the Russian Foreign Ministry, Maria Zakharova, said on Wednesday that Moscow's response to Lithuania's ban on the transit of goods sanctions by the EU to the Russian city of Kaliningrad will not be exclusively diplomatic but practical in nature. On the other hand, Lithuania said it was simply applying agreed EU sanctions on Moscow. Nabil Khazini.
Between Moscow and Vilnius, the tone rose abruptly about the Russian oblast of Kaliningrad. For the Kremlin, Lithuania started a crisis by introducing last weekend restrictions on the transit of Russian goods to Kaliningrad passing through its territory. The response was immediate in Moscow.
This example shows that you cannot trust either verbal statements by the West or written ones. Russia will certainly respond to such hostile actions. Appropriate measures are being worked out between departments and will be taken in the near future. Their consequences will have a serious negative impact on the population of Lithuania.
Lithuania, which is a member of NATO and the European Union, said it was simply applying agreed EU sanctions on Russia, adding it was ironic to hear Moscow's complaints, given its military operation in Ukraine.
It's ironic to hear rhetoric about alleged violations of international treaties from a country which has violated possibly every single international treaty.
Following the Russian warnings to Lithuania about rail traffic limitations to Kaliningrad, the United States declared its complete support for the Baltic nation.
This is a campaign that includes dozens of countries around the world, including blocks of countries, in this case the EU, but also individual countries using their national authorities. Lithuania has been a stalwart partner in this. We stand by NATO, we stand by our NATO allies, and we stand by Lithuania.
The case shows how delicate are the relations between Russia and the Baltic countries, including Lithuania, and which are today members of NATO and the European Union. These states consider themselves in the front line.
Staying in Europe, in the United Kingdom, negotiations to end the rail strike resumed this morning as rail industry bosses look to avoid further strike action. Tens of thousands of workers walked out on the first day of Britain's biggest rail strike in 30 years as both the unions and government vote to hold fast on the statement in a row over pay. Services started later than normal this morning as trains were delayed, leaving depots due to network rail signalers and control room staff taking part in the strike.
This is making clear that we have got a financial crisis in our system, £2 billion of additional taxpayer money required at the moment. By making clear that we want to talk about it, by secondly being very, very explicit that we think all of our savings could be done through voluntary redundancy. I don't think there's anything inflammatory about that. It's actually about demonstrating there's a way forward that needn't harm our workers. And of course, on the back of that, then, we could be offering decent pay rises.
Ecuadorian protesters carried for more than a week marches and road blockades against rising food prices. Riot police on Tuesday used tear gas to dissolve protesters in the Ecuadorian capital, Quito, as demonstrators grew increasingly violent. Zara Farjani has more to tell.
On the 9th day of marches in Ecuador against President Guillermo Laso's economic policies, thousands of indigenous people clashed with the police, notably in Quito. Some protesters say they want a change in their government, accusing the current president of irresponsibility and mismanagement.
We are carrying out a peaceful strike in practice, but the police, the army itself, has stood up against us, opposed us and attacked us.
Now Lasso is not listening to us. He doesn't want to understand that the majority of Ecuadorians.
Universities, the United Nations, along with other 300 institutions, issued an invitation to the government and the indigenous protesters to reach an agreement. While the indigenous people have not yet responded, the government accepted the call.
We're attending to the legitimate demands of the citizens. The response has been more violence and new threats to attack Quito.
The Ecuadorian Minister of Defense accused the demonstrations of representing a serious danger for democracy, while dialogue is at a standstill.
Democracy in Ecuador is in a serious danger from the concerted actions of fanatics who prevent the free movement of the majority of Ecuadorians. The armed forces will not allow attempts to break the constitutional order or any action against democracy and the laws of the republic.
The Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities of Ecuador has been organizing marches and barricades since June 13th, demanding a reduction in prices of gasoline and agricultural products.
Timoshenko, the former leader of the de facto Marxists in Colombia, admitted on Tuesday his responsibility for more than 20,000 kidnappings perpetrated by his group during the armed conflict. Sitting in front of several former hostages and their families in Bogota Auditorium, Rodrigo London took responsibility for the kidnappings along with 6 other former top commanders at the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia.
Once again, we have come here as the last secretariat of the FARCEP and as Rodrigo Londoño Echeverry as the last commander to assume our individual and collective responsibility for one of the most heinous crimes committed by our organization.
A jetliner caught fire after landing Tuesday at Miami International Airport when the front landing gear collapsed, but no serious injuries were reported. The MD-82 jetliner was carrying 126 people, and 3 of them were taken to hospital for treatments of minor injuries. Other passengers were being bussed from the plane to terminal. Algerian Communication Minister Mohamed Bousliman inaugurated on Tuesday the International Press Center in the Meridian Hotel as part of Mediterranean Games that will take place in Iran. The center includes up 114 laptops which will facilitate the transmission of information to go worldwide. The center also includes 2 equipped studios for media as well as steps to a chance for media and people around the globe to have access to all what concerns the next Mediterranean Games.
The center is ready with modern equipment, around 140 computers, studios, as well as 200 equipped posts with IT technology. And the issue that was posed earlier was high-debit internet is now solved. The center is equipped with 200 mega internet. There is a giant screen for journalists who cannot move to the site where the games take place. They can watch all games live from the International Press Center.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.